Great. So if you've heard any of my previous talks or read any of my blog posts, you know that I talk a lot about China mobile trends, about super apps, and about WeChat in particular. Today, though, I wanted to step back and do a prequel of sorts and talk about what it was about China that allowed super apps to flourish. First things first, what exactly is a super app? A super app is an application that mixes and mashes third-party services, sometimes seemingly unrelated, and puts it all together in one application so that you're able to retain user mindshare and relevance. In China, some very common examples of super apps are WeChat, Alipay, Meituan, Taobao. Gojek is a great example in Indonesia. And these applications are now used by users in China and all across Asia to carry out their daily lives. It's to the point where the mobile becomes the remote control of their lives, handling not just their digital life, but their offline one as well. Let me give you an example. When you're using WeChat in China, when you wake up, you're using it to check the weather, to check all your communication, but then you also use it to hail your taxi to get to work, to order your lunch, to pay for your lunch, to pay for something from the office kitchen vending machine, to pay your utility bills, to talk to your coworkers, to order the taxi ride back home, to order your dinner delivery, and so forth. People are using WeChat for everything. And I'm sure you've heard that China has become a cashless society. There's lots of reporters talking about how you can function in China for weeks and never pull out your wallet, never pull out cash or a credit card. You're paying everything with your phone, from Starbucks to supermarket to the fruit stand on the corner of the street. This cashless society, powered by QR payments, where did that come from? It seems like China all of a sudden has shown up all over our headlines in the last couple of years. How did it all of a sudden explode with so much innovation? This is why I want to step back and look at what China looked like before even QR payments really took off. Here's an example. In China, there's a lot of charts that everything's going up and to the right. Everything's going up and to the right in China. But the stat I want you to focus on is the one on the right, which is in 2015, over 50% of retail commerce in China was already happening on mobile. 2015, this is before QR offline mobile payments took off in China, before it really hit WeChat and Alipay in a very big way. At that point, China was already making more retail purchases on their phone than their PC. In the US, it was less than 25%. So what is so unique about China that sets their landscape to behave so differently than the States? The answer, I believe, is this. China is the beneficiary of the leapfrog effect, where you have a whole number of users and developers skip the PC era altogether and jump straight into mobile. In the US, I actually believe we're still on the PC side. I think for most of the important tasks, we're still doing it on our laptops. Maybe we're not on our desktops, but we're on our laptops. And we use mobile as an access point, not as an entry point. Chinese developers, they don't have to support both platforms. They're focused just on mobile. That allows their designers, their product managers, and their business, corporate development, and strategy folks to think dramatically differently and access a different level of creativity. Because what's the problem when you have to support both platforms, both the PC and the mobile? What happens is we constrain our thinking. And we end up with situations where mobile becomes just a smaller version or a subset of what our computer can give us. Let me give you a concrete example. Last week, one of my coworkers was complaining that she couldn't buy shoes for her son on the phone. It was just impossible for her. She thought there was more information online. And I would agree with her. If I was buying shoes for my daughter, I would say the same statement. So let me try and unpack what's wrong with that sentence. That means that I naturally assume that my phone is only giving me a subset of the information that I can get on my computer. Or at best case, it's the same information but presented in a much more difficult to digest way. And that second sentence, part of that sentence, more information online. The whole phrase going online in my mind still means going to my browser on my laptop. It does not mean pulling up my phone. And I think that's true for most of America today. So the problem is, when we're thinking about desktop and mobile and supporting both platforms, what ends up happening is the mobile is just a smaller version of our website. And honestly, it feels like I'm wearing a shirt that's 2 sizes too small. It's uncomfortable. It's not designed for mobile from the ground up. So what does design and product thinking look like in a mobile-only world? I think if we look at a couple examples in China, you'll be shocked at how different it can look. Here's an example from Taobao. Taobao is a flagship application for Alibaba and the main shopping site that people will use in China to make their purchases. And in this particular example, which we're going to pull right up, you're going to see how they merchandise chocolate. Just give us 1 second. We're having some technical difficulties, but bear with me. I promise you the video will be worth it. In this video, you'll see how a listing for a simple box of chocolates would look like on the Taobao app. It's visual. It's like a catalog ad. You see what the chocolate looks like inside. You get nutrition facts. It's beautiful. They get to showcase the lifestyle of someone who would buy and eat that kind of chocolate. I even get dimensions of the box. I get all the information I would need to feel satisfied to complete that purchase there and then. Now let's contrast that with that same box of chocolates on Amazon. What would that look like? You see, Amazon compartmentalizes our information so that all the listings look the same. Let me ask you, is this the best way to sell chocolate on your phone? Here, at least I get some photos from the manufacturer. Most listings don't even have that, right? I get to a description box. I have to tap in. I have no idea how much text is in there. I get into the feature settings, same thing. This is how chocolate is sold, and this is an Amazon choice one, too. This is one of the more highly viewed listings, and this is how it compares to Taobao. The design is not meant for mobile from the ground up. It's a smaller version of the desktop. And therefore, when I buy this product on my phone, I might throw it in my shopping cart. I might not complete that purchase. And imagine if it's not a branded replenishable. If I'm shopping for clothing, if I'm shopping for a kitchen mat, something else I've never tried before. How worse will I feel on the phone collecting so little information? Next slide, we'll see another example of how Taobao rethinks shopping from ground up, designed just for mobile. In this video, we'll see a soybean kettle. And here again, I see reviews for that merchant. I see common questions. I see, hey, 100 renminbi off, it's 25% off, sounds great. I get to look at more photos, and as I'm browsing and deciding whether or not I want to buy this kettle, I can actually ask the seller a question. If I click the lower left-hand button, I go into a chat with this merchant. And here I can directly ask this merchant if the kettle comes in other colors. Does it come in red? Now, if I was on Amazon, if I was on eBay, if I was on Etsy, and I sent a seller a message, I would not expect a response back very quickly. Maybe not even in a day or two. Honestly, when I send messages to sellers on Amazon, I don't even expect a reply. I'm just happy or delighted if they reply. But you can see, right now the seller's already writing back. That means within 20 seconds of me asking this question, I get information back. And the seller says, no, only comes in gold. And that's true for all of the major merchants on Taobao. You get instant information. And that's what you would expect on mobile, where messaging is key. Let's contrast that with Amazon. On Amazon, if I want to ask the seller a message, I'm told to expect a response in 2 business days. And it takes me several clicks to even get to this page from the mobile listing. You see, design is thought of completely differently in Asia because they live in a mobile-only world where mobile is the entry point, not the access point, where the mobile is tasked with giving you all the information you need so you complete the purchase. You don't just throw it in your shopping cart and wait to complete the purchase on your computer. They think about design drastically differently. So how do I connect the dots from this mobile-only world and why I believe that naturally results in super app business models? The answer is this. Selling products is one way of conveying information. But what are other big areas that we're using our desktop for that don't translate well on the mobile? A big area for me is search. The thing that I use my computer the most for, I'm missing a slide here, is actually my browser. I use my browser application more than any other application on my computer. And typically what my browser looks like is this. It's a big window, and it has maybe 8 to 10 tabs open. Most of the time, I have multiple windows open, and each window has another 5 to 10 tabs open. That's how I browse the internet. Maybe there's 20 tabs if I happen to be shopping for something. I use my desktop primarily for the browser and primarily with tabbing inside the browser. Now translate that browser experience to a phone, and it's a pretty painful experience. I don't care if you're using the Chrome app or the Safari app. How do you manage 20, 30 tabs in your browser on your phone? It doesn't work. It's very hard to figure out what other tabs you have open. It's very hard to jump in between tabs. And so therefore, when we're on our phones, we don't have the luxury of accessing the internet through a great, flexible browser. Instead, we use our home screens. Instead, we're using our home screen, and we use apps as these various web pages. But you see, on a computer, I'm accessing hundreds of websites a day. I am not going to download hundreds of applications a day or even a year. Therefore, when I'm on my phone, when I want to access information, when I want to access the World Wide Web, I am stuck with using the applications I already have on my phone. And therefore, the natural conclusion for this is that every app has the chance to become that portal, to become that browser, to become that operating system for you to access the internet. The pictures on the right here, these are pictures of super apps in China. This one right here is Alipay. The one on the right is WeChat Wallet. And you'll see, in these applications, they give you shortcuts. It's a portal. It's like Yahoo back in the day. And they direct you to third-party services so that you never have to leave their app. This is the secret, again, to all the Chinese apps that you hear about. They use third-party services and link them into their apps so that they retain mindshare and relevance. This is the browser picture I was talking about earlier, and how this is how I browse the internet on my computer, and how this doesn't translate on your phone. So what changes if we believe that this super app world will one day make it to the States? Because maybe it doesn't matter for that Facebook generation, but it matters for the people who grow up on Snapchat. It matters for the people who grow up on Musical.ly. They are using the internet and accessing everything through their phones. I believe this means we need to rethink a lot of principles, including onboarding, design, product, business model. When you are designing and creating something for mobile, how do you convey the platform depth of an Amazon, a Facebook, a LinkedIn, a Salesforce? Have you ever tried to sign up for a brand new account on those services just on the phone? How do you teach someone that Facebook is more than just a newsfeed? Design-wise, is it possible that maybe the best practices and principles we think around desktop design don't actually translate to mobile? Or better said, is maybe there an even better set of mobile-specific principles we should follow? Product, how do we rethink how we can build features that are more tightly integrated to the hardware so that we bifurcate our mobile and our web experience? Is that okay? Is that a good thing? And finally, business model. Do you become a super app yourself, or do you partner with an existing one? Look at Amazon's home screen right now. Now, I'm a very, very loyal Amazon customer. And so for me, this home screen is perfectly fine. But if I was brand new to Amazon, this home screen does not tell me that I can buy basically everything under the sun on Amazon. It doesn't tell me that I can buy clothing, goods, that I can buy music, that I can buy digital movies. It doesn't convey the depth of the platform. So for those of you working at large companies, when you have to tackle your next billion users in developing countries, India, Southeast Asia, how do you convey all the depth that your platform has to offer? Onboarding changes in mobile. Likewise, design. I believe design principles for mobile are drastically different than what works on web. And I'm going to say something very controversial, which is this. I actually think this front page of Taobao is not bad. And I know most designers in the West will say this is a terrible page. They'll say it's cluttered, way too colorful, looks like a circus. But I'll tell you, as a user, everything is just one tap away from me. And actually, it shows me all various categories that Taobao has to offer. It focuses on information flow, and it minimizes taps. Minimizing tap includes minimizing search, because every search is a keyboard pull-up. And every time I'm typing in my keyboard, I am tapping on my screen. So how do you rethink a design principle set where you never even have to pull up your keyboard? How do you design an app that doesn't use keyboard entry? Product-wise, if you think about mobile products in China, they focus on integrating everything that they can in the hardware. That means using the front camera. That means using the back camera. That means using the accelerometer, the GPS. We are so often trained in Silicon Valley to think that our mobile apps have to be platform agnostic and compatible to our web versions. And therefore, we constrain our thinking in what features are possible on the phone. I actually think it's fantastic if your phone is not backwards compatible to your PC version. That means that you are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the hardware that you've been given. And finally, business models. How do you think about whether or not you have the traffic to build a super app and the network effects to maintain it? Or is there another existing super app out there that you can strike a great, great partnership with and trade that traffic for distribution? Here's a quick sneak peek of what a mobile-only world looks like in China. In China, because all these super apps have so much information about you and they also have your payment credentials, people are using their phones to pay for everything. That includes at the Starbucks, it includes unlocking their bikes, it includes at vending machines. This picture here, you'll see it's a venture-backed startup called Xiaodian. And it's for battery charging stations at restaurants. Because in China, battery is now the new fuel. Here's where we are today in the US. This is a flyer that I took a photo of just last week. And on this flyer, it has all these tabs that you cut on the bottom, and you just rip one off so that you can go back home when you get to your computer, type in that URL, and learn more information. Now imagine if this flyer just had a QR code, and imagine if we all knew how to use QR codes so that we could scan them, get all the information we need right there and then on our phone, and not feel like that was a subset of the internet browser. In China, we already have developers that are foregoing making websites and just making apps. And in fact, we also have some developers that are foregoing making apps and just making mini programs. What is a mini program? A mini program is an app less than 10 megabytes that can run fully functionally in the WeChat super app. It means that user never has to go to a separate app store to download anything and can still access all the functionality that a typical app would have. It's very successful in China, and they've created over 580,000 mini apps in just 1 year. So the good news is this. I read a lot about how in mobile, the consumer, big giants have already been created, and there's no more innovation left. So what's the next big platform? Is it AR? Is it VR? Is it self-driving this? Is it self-flying that? I'm here to say no. There is so much more innovation left in mobile. We are so, so far away from what a mobile society can truly look like. And if you believe that mobile only is coming to the States, then rethink all those principles that we've been taught around design, around onboarding, around product. All the design principles that you've been taught for clean white space, clean search bar, is that really the best way to convey information on the phone? What we've been trained for compartmentalized listings such as Amazon, is that really the best way to sell something on the phone? And business model-wise, having a constellation, a family, a suite of apps instead of one app that connects all of these features together. Which one really makes sense going forward in an app-only, in a mobile-only world? I believe as you study not just China, but other developing countries, India, Southeast Asia as well, you are going to come to the same conclusion as me, which is this: I believe a mobile-only world deserves its own set of rules. Thank you.
What do you think, what's the greatest strength of China that U.S. should learn from?
The question is, what is the greatest strength of China that the U.S. should learn from? I think one major advantage that China has is it's more competitive. And that's partially just due to the sheer size of its population. With over 1.3 billion people, you have maybe 10, 20 startups going after any single idea. And there's enough funding now in the country to support all of those startups. And so by sheer competition, I think of China as the Hunger Games, for those of you who have seen the movie. And the one that wins at the end, the Katniss Everdeen, she's stronger than all of her competitors. And therefore, in China, innovation happens faster because if you don't innovate at that breakneck speed, you die.
Hi. I was wondering, do you think it's like okay though? WeChat, it kind of is like, would be like a monopoly. And like the mobile world, are we okay with that sort of ideology? I don't know.
Yeah, so the question is around WeChat, and are we okay with having one app that controls so much of our mind share? I would say the US is actually not that different in terms of specific major internet giants controlling our mind share. It's just that they do it in multiple applications, right? You have Android, you have YouTube, you have Gmail, you have Chrome. If you mashed it all together, you spend the same amount of time on Google Suite services versus a WeChat. Same thing with Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. It's just in the US, we often will split things into multiple applications so it doesn't feel like we're just using services of one company.
Hi, I'm intrigued by your term super app. Is that new, or is that something that's been used for a while and maybe I just heard it for the first time today?
It's fairly new. I started using it in a speech in November.
Wonderful, thank you.
One over here. Yeah, one of the problems I find with apps, and sometimes I just leave them, is every single app wants me to sign up with all my information.
Yeah.
And I just don't like signing up. So
Yeah.
Is there a solution in China or anywhere else that you have seen which is like a single sign-on, but I can use apps from different vendors, not the same vendor?
Yeah, actually you touched upon the exact reason for why super apps make sense. So WeChat works as a super app because you only sign up once to WeChat. And then from there, every other service or mini app that you download, right, or access, you never have to sign up again. And it uses the same WeChat login credentials. It's as if you only had to sign up once to access the entire internet. And you only had to type in your payment credentials once for the entire internet. And you only had to type in your shipping address once for the whole internet. And everything is now one-click purchase enabled. That's the power of a super app.
Hello, there it is.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Paul Perkins from Orion Electronics. So I actually lived in Beijing from 2013 to 2015. I traveled back and forth and do work, and it was really interesting. So I left in at the end of 2014, came back in 2016, and I was introduced to this whole cashless society like instantaneously. And then when I came back, from China to America, I was just back to using cash. And I was like, man, this this is a really interesting case. And so my question is, with the super app concept, do you think it's a cultural difference that because China's more of a community-based society, whereas America's obviously very individualistic. Do you think there's a cultural difference that will keep us from actually getting to those types of apps?
My personal opinion is that it's not a cultural difference, and it's just that the US business models haven't gotten them there yet because we are supporting, again, this legacy concept of both PC and mobile. And therefore, the way even our companies are organized are around specific products. They don't think about one massive product launch, one massive product update. In terms of the actual payments, I do think that one has some cultural nuances. And it's less cultural and more just around timing. China is really leapfrogging the credit card era altogether and going straight towards mobile payments. So in China, a lot of the QR code mobile payments you hear about started by replacing cash use cases, not credit card use cases. And there are so many cash use cases in China, that's why it had the snowball effect it did.
And that's our time for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.